I can't go to training today, so I am going to talk about AEW. Um, the big thing that a lot of fans talk about, I haven't really saw any episode of AEW. I'm a little ashamed of that because, once again, like AEW is mostly on television, and I am poor, so I can't really just get cable TV at the moment. So getting AEW is a bit of a challenge for me. Although, from what I can understand, the show itself is flourishing. It's been around for as long as it has. It's went through like what, 5 champions? Let's see: Jericho, Moxley, Omega, um, Page, and now Punk, who had to redo it, who had to kind of let it go because he's injured or whatever. But yeah, like AEW, like the biggest critique I've heard of so far from fandoms has been the obvious thing. I'll talk about that later on. But the other thing has been like too many stables. Now, one thing I tend to criticize fans about is the lack of creativity when it comes to like things, because like they look at things and they from the jump just immediately say, like, they'll look at a picture of a wrestler and be like, this wrestler looks such and such, so they're going to be such and such. Like, I am more than convinced that if without knowing anything about Keith Lee, if a wrestling fan looked at a picture of Keith Lee before ever knowing how awesome he is, he just would have said he needs to lose some weight, you know. He looks like he's a powerhouse, just stuff like that. So, like, I'm convinced, and it's just like in the case of stables. In my opinion, stables are quite possibly first off, I'm speaking for myself here, as an anime fan, as a fan of fiction, as a fan of like superheroes and stuff like that. Faction wars are always cool to me. I always like the idea of one faction going up against another faction. And if you look at American history, we're all about war. We're all about like one side of a group of people going up against another side of a group of people. So the concept of stables, the concept of having too many stables is just, I don't know, just over my head a little bit, because it's like, like, granted, you probably don't want to see like 4-on-4 matches or 5-on-5 matches because it takes away from certain wrestlers. It takes, like, it's too much going on at one time. That part I understand. But the idea of stables, in my opinion, have always been a great idea in professional wrestling. For one, breakups. When a stable breaks up, it's the greatest thing ever in some cases. Because, like, most stables are usually a vehicle to either A, push one wrestler with a whole bunch of other wrestlers, or B, get a whole bunch of wrestlers on screen at the same time. If you have, like, a roster of, let's say, I'll say 50 people, right? If you have a roster of like 50 people and you have a show that's about maybe 2 hours, there's no way you're going to get all 50 of those people into 2 hours of production or whatever. It's going to be a bit of a challenge here, because you still have to have the matches, and you still have to have, like, even with the matches, the promos, the backstage segments and things like that, you still kind of have to, at some point, somebody is going to be neglected. So, like, it just feels like it's a good thing, but it could be, it could be an overkill, but it also is a really good thing. One thing I like about stables in professional wrestling, though, another thing anyway, is that it kind of opens up a possible takeover of the company. Like, imagine if one stable had access to all the titles, right? Like, like a stable is almost always, as I like to call it, the Star Fox team, right? There's always an experienced member, a young upstart, possibly their rival, and somebody who's just sort of there as a smart guy, maybe like the manager or something. If you ever play Star Fox, and you know what I'm referring to. But or there's there's always a stable with the tag team wrestlers, the young upstart, and the leader, and sometimes maybe a manager. Let's just say that stable wins all the titles, so they're now they took over the company. So now you have another stable of people challenging them. Also, the cool thing about having Stable wars are fun. I like stable wars. Also, another cool thing about having too many stables is the one person who is not part of a team or stands out alone has the capabilities of being, the standout star. Literally because they're standing out. And, like, that is also a thing. Like, if I'm not mistaken, during the Immortal era of Impact, Samoa Joe was, like, the one guy who was, for a time, not part of that stable. I like the idea of multiple stables instead of just one big one that takes up the majority of the roster. Am I right, NWO? And it's so much that you could do with that. You could split them up. You could tease split ups and actually keep them together. You can have titles turn hands. You could have a stable intermingling, so to speak. Like if anything, you could literally. This is literally the video game aspect of professional wrestling that you as a fan should be able to just like have a whole bunch of creative with. Like, let's just say, for example, like, if I'm not mistaken, there's a stable out there dedicated to the Nightmare Factory. Okay, so if I was head of creative, if I was the guy who was in charge of like creative or whatever, then for the Nightmare Factory, like, I'll break them up in the most creative way I could think of. Let's see, QT Marshall would look at one of his students and be like, you should be the next person to challenge for the AEW championship, right? You could be the guy. You're my best student. You should be the one that challenges for it. And that person, challenges for it. Maybe they lose. And, maybe they lose, obviously, right? And the guy and like somebody else in the stable goes, yo, were you serious when you said this person is your best student? Because I've been here since day one, yada, yada, yada. And, first off, I need for you to relax. You're all great students. But so far, he was the one who showed the most, blah, 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 blah. And, this thing, you have a bit of a infighting going on there. And this thing, you have, like, all of these students is like, I'm the best student. No, I'm the best student. And, QT probably won't be able to control his students. Kicks out the one that started all this stuff in the first place. And, now you got this one guy going up against the factory. As time goes by, the factory ultimately gets a little bit more disheveled because of the speculation that QT Marshall is playing favorites. Also a lot more people losing, a lot more losses that be happening. So QT is like, QT could, be like, you're all a bunch of losers, blah, 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 blah. And the students could be like, no, if we're the losers and you trained us, what does that make you? Infighting. And like you could have like the former members of the Nightmare Factory, and then you could have like a whole new fashion of students come in under new, QT Marshall, and the old stable members come in and be like, hey, don't trust QT. He's not a good guy. Blah 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 blah, and all over again. The Nightmare Factory could easily be like the stable that brings in, fresh talent. Bless me. Let's see. Then there's the Jericho Appreciation Society. Honestly, I don't really know enough about the Jericho Appreciation Society to like talk about them. But like from what I understand, 2.0 was a very well accomplished tag team before this. And you still have you have the original members of I forgot the name of the original group with Sammy and them, but you had the original members with new people. So at some point they could like collide or something like that, or they could be the team that successfully takes over the company. As a matter of fact, you could have Hager become the TNT champion so that Guevara could feud with Hager, and kind of have this little moment where it's like we used to be friends, blah 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 blah. Now I don't like you, blah blah blah. Just stuff like that. There's ways to incorporate stables into things. Like let's see, I'm trying to think of the other stables. Okay, so there's Nightmare Factory, the Jericho Appreciation Society, the Blackpool Combat Club. I mean, they're just doing what it is that they do best. But also, hear me out on this. Somebody could be like, you could have one stable go up to those guys, do a promo. You guys call yourself the Blackpool Combat Club, but the only person I see here with enough potential to actually go further in their career is Yuta. Because the rest of y'all are just a bunch of WWE rejects. They should be called the WWE Rejects and Wheeler Yuta. Boom. Now you have now the Blackpool Combat Club has became even more relevant because they got an actual enemy that they have to beat the holy high heck out of. And I believe that the guy who should do that is none other than Caster and the Sons of a Gun. Because I will not call them the A-word boys. And the fact that they aren't called Sons of a Gun already is just that part poxes me a little bit. That plagues me. It gives me nightmares. But it's there's so much creativity that you can do with this stuff. It's just it's not that there's too many stables as much as there's a lot of potential with what you can do with them. I mean, the baddies, right? Let's see, with the baddies, if I'm not mistaken, isn't there a trios division coming to AEW? I mean, imagine how far the baddies could go. Imagine, check this out, right? You have the trios division, and I don't know, maybe you could have a women's trios thing, right? I know this is a bit of a bold idea, but just hear me out, okay? Women's trios, the baddies challenge some other 3-woman team, right? They fight and the baddies lose. So next thing you know, and obviously, there could be a miscommunication in the ring, and Cargill can be you two, one of you are the reason why I lost this match, because this is not my first loss. This is more losses on the two of you. Blah 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 blah. Stokely could be that's not what this is. That's not what this is. You need to calm down. Blah 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 blah. And she could be like, shut up, Stokely. You are fired. You knew this was going to happen and you didn't tell us anything. Blah 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 blah. Cargill is now a big heel in the women's division again, and and next thing you know, Hogan and Red Velvet could become a female tag team with Hathaway as a manager, and they could bring in the AEW women's tag team titles, right? As a kind of a middle finger to WWE, just recently getting rid of theirs. You see what I'm saying? There's ways you could go about this here. Even better, right? You ready for this? Cargill versus Nyla. But hey, I'm just saying, there's ways that you can go about this creatively. I just really wish that fans wouldn't just look at this and be like, yeah, I can't do anything with this. I don't like it. This is the fantasy booking thing that y'all should be doing right now. It's just open your minds up, man. Just open your minds up. I just gave you a whole bunch of random stuff, and they sound terrible, but give me some of your ideas. That's it, guys. Love and peace and safety and all that. And I really wish I was at training right now.